The Gauteng government is defending its decision to reinstate 3 of its senior officials who were on suspension. It says the redeployment of these officials is in line with public service labor regulations, and they will help with service delivery while the disciplinary processes are continuing. Now, for more on this, we are joined by Gauteng government spokesperson Elijah Mhlanga. Baba Mhlanga, thank you so much for your time and for joining us.
Thank you, thank you.
So the 3 officials that are in question is the suspended HOD for health, as well as 2 officials from the community safety department, that being the HOD and the CFO. Maybe just talk to us with regards to how far those disciplinary processes are.
Well, thanks very much. The disciplinary processes are underway. That's why we felt it was the right time now for them to come back to work and contribute somewhere else, because that risk that was there in terms of them interfering with the investigation has been minimized. So, in fact, with the HOD for health, there's going to be another sitting in March, which is next month. As for the other colleagues, we are looking for a date. But as you know, these things are complicated. That's why we feel that we need to try find a balance somewhere.
So it's the 60-day limit with regards to that precautionary suspension that has now led you to bringing them back. And maybe just talk to us about those specific labor and public service guidelines that guided you to this reinstatement.
Well, the first thing that the Code of Conduct in terms of the Code of Good Governance in terms of public relations, especially when it comes to matters like this one, is that the employer must exercise a fair procedure, which means you need to follow all the processes that are in place. Because the employee has rights as well, and those rights should not be trampled upon because you're trying to arrive quickly at an outcome. So the 60-day, it's in terms of you having, as an employer, having to institute that disciplinary process, which we have been able to do within that time period. So that is underway. But as you know, once the sitting commences, complications emerge. And in this case, it's been the same as well, especially with the 2 colleagues from the Department of Community Safety. The government employed lawyers to manage the process. We had a chairperson. We also had an evidence leader. But the colleagues then indicated that they are not able to proceed because they don't have the financial resources, and therefore lawyers shouldn't be utilized. And we therefore had to, the chairperson made a ruling that government couldn't use lawyers. So we had to embark on a different process, which is now leading to a delay. It was upon that realization that this process was going to be prolonged, and we therefore felt that before we could prejudice members of the public by paying these senior officials while they're sitting at home, we needed to return them to work, but deploy them to different departments.
And that rationale of deploying them to different departments, do you think this would not further implicate in terms of their interference within these processes?
Not at all, because they are not in the environment they were in when they were charged. So the allegations are related to them having been in different departments. So where they are now, they are working under somebody, so they are under supervision by a different person, even though they are still able to utilize the skills and the experience that they have. And we feel that the public will continue to benefit from the work that they will be contributing in those departments.
And of course, I mean, as a department and as a government, a Gauteng provincial government, you've received some criticism with regards to this move. We saw the DA coming in and saying that disciplinary action has not been taken, and the worry especially being with the CFO within the Department of Community Safety being moved rather to the Department of Environmental to help with financial administration processes. But I think what I want us to touch on, and I understand and you explain that really it was also in the fairness that as a department you need to offer to those individuals during this process. And if you look at the PFMA and the PFMA as well as the Treasury regulations, that really does emphasize on consequence management and speedy, efficient resolution, especially when it comes to disciplinary matters. We saw that the AG has frequently highlighted that failing to conclude investigations and disciplinary actions timeously constitutes a failure to implement consequence management.
Yeah, we are doing exactly that. You know, we are aware of all those regulations. That's why we acted within the 60-day period. to institute those disciplinary actions, and the hearings have since commenced. While at the same time, we feel that they need to contribute somewhere. You know, we also get criticized for paying senior officials millions of rand while they're sitting at home. I mean, which one is better? Should they come back and contribute somewhere? Like I said, they are working under the supervision of other people. One, two, they're not working in the very same departments where the allegations emerge from. So we also need to be cognizant of the fact that they are not guilty. We're just conducting a process here. Nobody knows what the outcome is going to be. We have completed the investigations. That's why now government is going to present its evidence. They need to respond to that. They may even call witnesses. That's their right. So nobody knows how long that process is going to be. But the important thing is that we've already commenced that process. We note what the DA is saying. We note also what other commentators are saying, such as Professor Alex van der Heever yesterday, who said it was nonsense that we are referring to regulations. Unfortunately, we have to follow the process. It's the law that is there that must be applied by everyone. So we cannot be emotional about these things. You need to be fair, you need to be just, because if you don't do that, people may get off scot-free even when they are guilty, based on a technicality. That is the worst thing that you want. There are hundreds of cases of people who got away with murder simply because procedure was not followed. And we don't want to be part of that statistic. So we are trying to do the best that we can here, balancing the interest of the public while we are also dealing with corruption and maladministration in the Gauteng provincial government.
You spoke about one of the speed humps being the use of lawyers and the financial constraints on some of the parties in this. What would you say are some of those lessons learned, particularly by government, that will influence future policies, especially when handling such cases and allegations?
One is the thoroughness of the investigation. So the cases are not the same. On the one case of the HOD of Health, you had SIU involved there. They conducted the initial investigation. They were not happy with what they received from the HOD. They requested more information, which he provided. The investigation was completed, but time was consumed in that process, which means that that particular disciplinary process is going to take a life of its own, and it cannot be compared to any other. And when you look at the alleged transgressions by the other colleagues as well, the cases are not the same. But at the same time, we need to make sure that we put them through a fair and just process so that the outcome reflects exactly what would have taken place as far as the evidence that we have is concerned, but also reflecting their responses to whatever it is. And remember, once the outcome is out, they can still appeal and do all other things. So we need to make sure that the process is fair, which is very important. And second, that the outcome is just, and that even if they choose to appeal, they should not stand any chance of winning. That's if indeed they have been found guilty. But for now, they're not found guilty. An investigation is underway, and the process is also in progress to make sure that the right outcome is found out. But we hope that as we discuss this matter, those that are in the public service in positions of responsibility will note as well the inconvenience when you get involved in things that are not consistent with the law. Even if it is alleged, just try, focus on your work. In Gauteng, we focus on lifestyle audits, which is one tool that we have to try deal with corruption and maladministration. We also have the ethics committee as well, which looks at all matters regarding governance, because we focus on clean governance, and we'll continue to use all the instruments that we have to make sure that we eradicate corruption in the system.
And how much of a tough balancing act is it to ensure that you go through these processes efficiently and effectively and correctly, while also just balancing out the public perception that's watching this play out?
Yeah, it's a difficult one because, you know, when a person who's accused of corruption, for example, is sent back to work, people say there's a cover-up, and that's one of the comments that has been made by some commentators, political parties, forgetting that there's a process. Unfortunately, in this country, we've got the labor relations, which guides us in terms of what we need to do. So those people who are emotional about this, we understand, because corruption is a serious issue that we need to deal with, but we also need to be calm and understand that in dealing with it, we need to follow procedure, which is absolutely critical. People have been reinstated with back pay going back years, simply because the employer made a mistake in the process. We don't want to be part of that particular record of having done the wrong thing because we're under pressure from political commentators. So it's important that we all abide and adhere to the rules that have been laid down for us to follow.
All right, Elijah Mhlanga, thank you so much for coming through and clarifying some of this which has been making rounds, especially on social media and in the media. We really do appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.